Maria, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Ryan?
I'm really, really good. Nothing I like doing more on a Friday morning than talking to you about how to use AI to sell faster and sell better.
Heck yes.
Awesome. Let's get into it.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Well, when we think about winning more deals, I actually like to start here. What's the big picture problem? I really think it's this. Buyers don't want to talk to us. They don't want to talk to us, Maria.
No.
Have you noticed this? They don't want to talk to us. Maria, why don't buyers want to talk to us?
A million reasons. A million reasons. We're focused on ourselves. We don't listen.
Yeah. At our worst, that's true, right? Buyers are used to having sales experiences or buying experiences that just are not valuable to them, right? It's not a good experience. And as buyers, we've all had that experience, right? We've all worked with a sales professional who was sort of in it for themselves, had a little bit of that commission breath. So I think what's important is when we're thinking about how do we be more effective, how do we increase win rate, we got to think, number one, what do buyers value, right? That's the question. What do buyers actually value? And the good news is the data on this is actually really, really clear and widely available. If we go to the next slide, all of the sales industry analysts are asking this very question of buyers every year. This data is from the LinkedIn's data sales report last year, but it's consistent with similar research that's, again, as I said, it's really recycled every year. What buyers look for in sellers, right? The traits they identify in sellers that they purchase from. You're looking at it. Number one, active listening. Active listening so they might be more effective in actually solving my problem as the buyer. This confidence one is interesting, right? We want to feel like we are in the hands of a capable, confident, able problem solver who's going to help and not enable us to go solve that problem. And if they do a really good job listening and helping me solve problems, that creates the kind of trust that is the glue to great relationships, right? So all of these are qualitative attributes that show up in our sales process, especially in our sales conversations. So what we're going to talk about, Maria, is why don't you share with us some frustrating scenarios that lead to these bad buyer experiences, ineffective sales results, and then let's look at how we can use AI to reduce the likelihood of those happening in our cycles.
Absolutely. So you don't have to answer out loud, Ryan. And if you're listening to this at home, you don't have to answer this out loud either. But put yourself in either a buyer's shoes or maybe an experience you've had selling. Have you ever, had this big demo? You're getting your account team ready, maybe a subject matter expert or your sales engineer, and you quickly have to get them up to speed to prepare for this demo that is live in maybe even minutes. And it looks something like this from this clip from the movie of the breakup, but everyone's not really singing as one because of the lack of preparation. Because if you were to go back and try to do this, if you have access to listening to calls, you'd have to listen to hours and hours of conversations, and it would just take a long time. So this is usually what ends up happening.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to being ready to start that demo and everybody on the selling team, or at least some of us on the selling team, are silently, frustrated that the preparation has been weak and it's a high stakes meeting and everybody can sort of smell that we're not really ready. You know who else can smell it, Maria?
The buyer.
The buyer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if we think about, how does artificial intelligence help with this? Actually, it's some really cool and very, very, very practical ways. If we go to the next slide. So if you think about what goes into preparing for the big demo, it's getting a selling team organized around things like, what did the buyer actually say in the previous meetings around that actual discovery? Well, don't have a meeting to have a meeting about what happened. These use conversation intelligence to record, and we can analyze our previous conversations, not just to get a transcript, which we can search and we can review, although that's actually super, super helpful. These days, we can use generative AI to automatically summarize those previous meetings and look at those summaries so that in a matter of 5 minutes, we can quickly distill what were the key points, what were the things we agreed to, what were the objections perhaps that were surfaced in those previous meetings. So if you're short on time for preparation AI is a real big helper there, making sure we're actually showing up into these meetings with the context from the previous call. So when we get into the demo, we're not asking the buyer the same questions that they've already answered, which immediately makes them tune out and say, this is not worth my experience.
Absolutely. There's nothing worse than having to re-explain yourself over and over again, especially too in the handoff process when you're, just interacting with new people within a company. So definitely a big area there that it can help teams. Okay, so the second barrier to this, all right, this is another one. The moment you realize you forgot to send the recap email, if your reps' calendars look anything like ours, they're in back-to-back meetings with customers and internal meetings. Then you get to the end of the day and you're like, oh gosh, I didn't send that email. I needed to do that. And so the impact of that, maybe sending it delayed after 24 hours or 48 hours or forgetting altogether, which is probably the worst piece. They're not feeling heard from those conversations, those meetings, if it's not being sent. And more importantly, like if you're having to try to go back and look through your notes, it takes a lot of time and create an email from scratch. So this can be a difficult process, and the impact of this is really not being able to enable your buyer to navigate these conversations internally with the information that you really need them to have to be educated in those conversations.
Maria, if I were a man of tattoos, and I'm not yet, but I'm not totally opposed to it, can I tell you the tattoo I would have? It's a favorite quote and the quote is this. It's actually two of them. I'm going to give you two. I literally get both. Okay. Number one, there is no great writing. There's only great rewriting. Oh, that speaks to the former journalist in me before I got into sales. And similarly, revision is not cleaning up after the party. Revision is the party, right? So when you're writing a great recap email, which by the way is a form of listening, what buyers value, they value listening. When you're sending your recap, are you making it all about you and links to all your case studies? If you're trying to get it out quick and you're using the template that you've got in your email client, you probably are making it all about you, right? Instead of making it all about the customer. But man, we put all of this time into putting the email together, and it's like, I don't have time to refine this and make this message better because I got to move on to the next thing. The power of AI, the power of generative AI, what we're doing at revenue.io is we take that conversation, that very recorded conversation I mentioned before, where we've got the generative conversation summaries and the transcript. We take that, we formulate it into a recap email that is matched to the best practices we know buyers want in these recaps. Now, some sellers are going to take that and they're going to hit send. Hey, better than nothing. But what great sellers do is they realize, wow, the power of AI is to write the draft for me. Now, I'm going to reference that call analysis, that transcript. I'm going to spend 10 minutes. I'm going to make it better, right? This is really the power of this kind of technology. It's doing the heavy lifting and the administrative, noisy work that humans are not particularly good at. So we can spend more of our time concentrating on our superpower, which is that emotional intelligence that enables us to take a great first draft and turn it into and turn it into a much better final draft.
That's perfect perspective to be thinking about this for emails. I know that a lot of sales teams could be afraid of this because they're like, well, AI can't write as well as my reps. Absolutely, at this point right now. So I think that this is just to look at it as a great first draft so that you can add those human elements. Awesome, Ryan.
All right. What's the next one, Maria?
So the next one is the third barrier is the forgetting problem. And Ryan knows this better than anyone else because he's taught this to our team. And we're really focused on it, being that 90% of new information is forgotten after the first month without being reinforced. And so why does this matter? It means that this guidance, if you are giving coaching guidance, is not being applied in these real conversations that it actually matters. So despite those great efforts to upskill and to have all the context and information needed to have a really quality conversation, it leaves your reps with, not delivering on those areas that the buyer values most. So, what that looks like might be using filler words that impact your credibility. It might be the fact that you are unable to tailor to a new persona or industry because you all serve so many different markets. So this is really important, and a big barrier to having great conversations is just forgetting the coaching and training that you're given.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because you have sales folks who are actually quite capable of driving an exceptional conversation and like delivering value to the buyer, in part because they're really hungry to execute on their listening training, or the training that they've been given to ask really, really good questions that help the buyer more quickly get at the business problems they really want to solve. But as you mentioned, in the moment, they just completely forget. The training goes out the door. And this is one of the most exciting areas where AI is stepping in to help to solve that problem. If we go to the next slide, it's using artificial intelligence to provide real-time guidance live and in the meeting. I'll give you an example. I'm a student of the world of listening. Listening is a craft that can be studied. It can be taught. I like to say I'm an aspiring expert listener. I have my good days, I have my bad days, and so I've been in live customer conversations. And as much as I preach against the unending monologues, I'm guilty of them. And so imagine being in a meeting. You're at minute 2, which is already really long, and instead of your peers trying to bug you in chat or whatever it is which you're not paying attention to, you get this gentle pop-up on your screen that says, "Slow down, dude. You are on a monologue. Take a deep breath. Ask an open-ended question." That same technology can do things like, "Hey, we're talking to the economic buyer in this deal. We're late stage, and we actually haven't asked them about their decision criteria," which we know is important in our sales process, but also is an important thing for the buyer to be thinking about. Let's remind the seller to ask those questions. This is really changing the game in just reminding and reinforcing the best practices that sellers want to execute in those conversations, but sometimes they forget.
Absolutely.
So, hey, Maria, I think we take these 3 things and we use AI to solve those 3 problems. We can help a lot of sellers out there avoid these frustrating scenarios, deliver better buying experiences, right, for our buyers, and ultimately close more deals. What do you think?
I've seen it with my own eyes. Absolutely.
Amen. Maria, great to be here with you today, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
You too. Thank you.
Hey, and everyone out there, if you want to learn more about how we're helping sellers use AI to solve these problems, you can reach out to us at revenue.io or find Maria or I on LinkedIn. Thanks so much.